There's been a terrible tragedy in Pickering. A man and his young daughter are dead, struck by a car just moments after their car was involved in a collision. Good afternoon. The chain reaction of events occurred at Brock Road and Taunton Road just before 8 p.m.
A 40-year-old man and his 3-year-old daughter are the victims. CTV's Janice Golding is covering the story and joins us now live. Janice.
Hi, Nathan. Yes, a very tragic story unfolding here. A father and his toddler are dead after a collision here in what is a very rural part of Pickering. Now, police say this is what unfolded. An intersection just nearby where we're standing is where the initial accident occurred, Taunton Road at Brock Road. This happened at around 10 to 8 p.m. A 40-year-old man and his daughter were in a northbound Honda on Brock Road. When they reached Taunton, they turned left and struck a Nissan that was traveling southbound through the intersection on a green light. The father and daughter continued to travel westbound for about 350 meters before they left the road and struck a guardrail, coming to rest in a ditch. The father then got out of the vehicle and started carrying his daughter back up the roadway. As they tried to cross Taunton Road, however, they were struck by a westbound BMW, sustaining life-threatening injuries.
When we're referring to the vehicle that fled, it was actually the Honda, the main vehicle that contained the 40-year-old male and the 3-year-old female that traveled quite a distance away from the initial collision. Potentially, the occupants of that vehicle were walking back to the initial collision site to speak with the second driver. However, we don't have that confirmed, and that's why it appears that that vehicle did not remain at the initial collision site.
Now, we can tell you that the Honda sustained significant damage and that the airbags deployed. We don't know just how badly injured the father or daughter were before they were struck by the BMW, but after the second collision, the father was pronounced dead and his daughter was pronounced dead in hospital. Reporting live from Janice Golding. Now back to you, Michelle and Nathan.
Thank you, Janice. Well, it's been a long, cold commute for TTC riders today. The temperature was -15 as they were forced to wait for shuttle buses. There is no subway service along a stretch of Line 1 due to what the TTC says are emergency rail repairs, and that's forced the suspension of service on the line between Wilson and Lawrence West stations.
Very early this morning, a train going through that area heard some noise. When we investigated, we found that there was a large piece of the power rail had been missing. It's about 4 or 5 inches of power rail that's missing. So we obviously cannot run service through there. This is around Yorkdale Station. Seriously can't run service through there with that in that condition.
I'm frustrated because they didn't mention it before we got to the station where we had to get off. And I'm sure they knew earlier if there were shuttle buses already running. And been waiting and waiting for shuttle buses. I don't know when they'll arrive.
It's negative. I'm going to York University, and especially on a cold day like this, it sucks.
Well, of course, it's always the day you're already late for class. I'm on my way up to campus, and it is what it is, right?
The TTC says customers are seeing delays of up to 10 minutes along the line. Shuttle buses are running between the two stations, and riders can also consider taking buses to the Yonge side of Line 1.
Meanwhile, this was the scene at Bloor-Yonge Station after power was shut off because of an issue this morning. There were brief delays between Bloor-Yonge and Union stations, but the problem has now been resolved. The TTC is investigating the cause.
The extreme cold has us in its grips for yet another day. Here's a live look at the city this afternoon. And it looks cold, but there's still some brave folks enjoying the ice at Nathan Phillips Square. Lindsay Morrison is here with what we're working with temperature-wise. And Lindsay, those are some big numbers.
Oh, for sure, Michelle. Yesterday, we had our coldest daytime high of the season so far. And then overnight last night and into this morning, we had our coldest overnight low. Right now, we're at -13 degrees. It still feels like -22. Toronto no longer under an extreme cold warning. However, that warning remains in place for much of southwestern Ontario. Part of the reason why, the winds, the strength of them and the direction of them influencing what it feels like outside right now. We've had some sun in Toronto. We're going to get a little more cloud. Lake effect snow is tapering off in some areas. Just a couple of snow squall watches and warnings remain. This afternoon, we are forecasting a daytime high of -11. It's going to continue to feel into the -20s, but hang in there. Improvements are coming when it comes to the temperature and the wind chill. We'll talk all about it coming up in your forecast. For now, though, Michelle. Back to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. And despite the extreme cold, Toronto police have taken to the water.
It's all part of their ice rescue training. CTV's John Musselman is bundled up against the cold and joins us now live. John.
Well, Nathan, Lindsay was talking about minus 22-degree wind chill. It really does feel like that here at Unwin Avenue down on the waterfront. We're at the Inner Harbour Marina here, the Outer Harbour Marina. Now, there was a demonstration by the Marine Unit about ice rescue, and we'll show you some video here taken just a short time ago. We've had 2 fatalities this week. On Monday, a car went into the ice at Asperger's Bay. A young woman died. A man on the islands also fell through the ice. So what police were talking about today is no ice is safe ice, and they were demonstrating how complicated it is to make a rescue in situations like this when you're dealing with extreme temperatures and shifting ice. Now, the marina situation here is a prime example. You've got solid ice in some areas, but then open water, and this is what happens. People get into trouble. You know, they can be on the ice, they don't know the area, it may be dark, and they fall through, and it can happen so quickly. Here's what police had to tell us today after this demonstration.
Not prepared like this, you're going to get that initial gasp. There's called a 1-10-1 rule. You have 1 minute to get your breathing under control because it's just going to be a shock to your system. You pretty much have 10 minutes of usable time to get yourself out, and then about an hour after that, you're probably going to go unconscious.
Every year we do get people, same thing, it could be 200 people on a Saturday that venture out onto that ice and go skating, and that's, you should not be on this harbour on Lake Ontario on the ice at all.
And here's a perfect example of what we were talking about. You can see the solid ice here in the harbor, but there's also a bit of open water. And now when people are walking their dogs or skating on the ice, this is when they get into trouble and they fall through areas because the water underneath is always moving. So the ice is very unpredictable. Reporting live down on the waterfront, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you, John. The Trump tariff threat is still top of mind for many businesses. Still to come, CTV Sean Leathon will have part 3 of his special report on what we can expect if the president follows through.
The focus is on youth mental health as Bell Let's Talk Day marks its 15th year. It's all about breaking down the stigma and raising awareness.
And while the work ahead is great, organizations are galvanizing to meet youth where they are at the moment. CTV's Beth McDonnell explains.
1, 2, 3. Youth helping youth in the face of a mental health crisis. Jack.org has chapters across the country and holds talks with the goal of bringing young people together and teaching them to support fellow youth having a hard time.
I was struggling with symptoms of anxiety and depression.
Liv Miller felt overwhelmed in high school, navigating relationships, keeping up with activities, and managing her class assignments. She got involved with Jack.org and now at 23 has a passion for speaking about and advocating for mental health.
It takes maintenance to take care of your mental health, and sometimes it takes multiple tries before you get it right in terms of who to go to for support, who you can really rely on.
Jack.org says the country is dealing with a youth mental health emergency. There are 1.25 million young people struggling with their mental health. That's about 1 in every 4 youth. Partnering with Mental Health Research Canada and Bell Let's Talk, a study found only 50% of youth are accessing the right support. It's leaving more than 500,000 youth without the care they need. The most troubling finding, suicide remains the leading health-related cause of death in youth in Canada. Jack.org board chair Zach Penley says there are ways to create better outcomes.
There's a lot of people that are showing early signs of distress that can be prevented from escalating. And with the right tools, we believe that we can avoid those situations where people are to the point in life where functioning becomes really difficult.
Early signs include increased isolation, class absences, and avoiding social events. Getting out of it, he says, comes down to education.
Our goal is that youth are there to support youth. So your friends can be on the lookout for signs of distress and provide them with tools into how to actually intervene, how to talk to someone who you think might be suffering.
We can't have a one-size-fits-all response to youth mental health needs.
Youth Wellness Hubs Ontario are also places to get on top of positive mental health. Since 2020, 60,000 people have sought services at their 32 spaces, co-designed by youth. They can access everything from food to Wi-Fi and activities to mental, substance abuse, sexual and physical health services.
And we're really lately been really trying to move to broader perspectives on mental health and mental health treatments, to develop treatments that are more culturally specific, that are more inclusive of different worldviews, and that integrate different aspects of a young person's life in order to achieve those optimal outcomes.
To support these outcomes, they say youth need to stay at the table, creating mental health services. Beth McDonnell, CTV News.
And on this Bell Let's Talk Day, we are joined by none other than Mary Deacon, the chair of Bell Let's Talk Day. Thanks for being with us. It's so nice to have you in studio on this big day for Bell and all of its partners. Maybe let's start with what's top of mind for you. 15 years. This has been a trailblazing campaign, well over a decade now. What's on your mind as we celebrate and ask for people to really join the conversation today?
I think we've made a lot of progress in the last 15 years. I think mental health organizations, Canadians, everybody has stepped in, raised their voice, helped make a difference. So I think there's some positives there, but we have a lot more to do. And that's part of the reason why we put a focus on youth in this year's campaign, because our youth are not okay.
What do you think is the most pressing issue when it comes to youth?
Their lack of ability to get access to appropriate supports and services. What I hear from youth, and when I listen to their stories, there is isolation, there is hopelessness. But at the same time, there's optimism and hope. So we can get it right, but we have to take action.
I think it's a bit surprising because we've been having this conversation for so long and a lot of money's been raised to think that youth are still struggling. I would assume that youth today feel okay speaking out. It's not something you don't suffer like you did maybe back in the day in silence. What do you think the barriers are, and what do you think we could do right now to start making a difference there?
I think there is a lot more willingness of young people and everyone to be open and to talk about mental health and mental illness, their own journeys, their own stories. However, since COVID, right, the impact of COVID on everyone, but it's had a specific and bad impact on young people, combined with eco-anxiety, excessive social media use, socioeconomic issues, housing issues, right? While some things are getting better, there's still so many struggles that young people are facing that the issue has not gone away, and this is a generation at risk.
Yeah, there's no question there's a lot more that needs to be done. Do you have some tips that are top of mind on what you would do if you had a young person or someone you were living with that you maybe thought they were experiencing some mental health issues?
Well, first of all, I would get them help, right? I'm a mother. You know, I've lived through many years of seeing the impact of untreated mental illness. If I had a young person in my life, I would make sure they got help. I would use every bit of influence I had and make as much noise as necessary to ensure that they got help. But we do have a lot of really great free resources in Canada, and we put a spotlight on them in this campaign. But what I will say, if there is a young person in your life who is truly in crisis, please call 911 or 988, which is a new service, and don't wait, because the sooner we intervene, the better the outcome is for a young person struggling.
Mm-hmm. And Mary, you say this from experience, having lost two brothers to suicide and having been very open about having struggled yourself. Mm-hmm. There's a very easy way that you can join this conversation, but also help. And could you maybe tell us about what we can do today, especially if you're really touched by what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. So to commemorate the 15th anniversary of Bell Let's Talk Day, we did something different. We put the focus on youth, and we're inviting Canadians to participate in a text to donate campaign. So using your mobile phone, text youth, Y-O-U-T-H, to 45678 and make a $5 donation. It's very quick, very easy. Bell will double your money, so you're doubling your impact, and you'll be making a difference in the lives of young people across the country and right in your own community.
It's such an easy and effective way to make a difference. Thanks, Mary.
We really appreciate you coming in today. This conversation is happening all day, but we also hope it continues throughout the year and beyond. We really appreciate it. The Chair of Bell Let's Talk, Mary Deacon, thank you so much and have a great Bell Let's Talk day.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
And we should remind you, because there are some numbers to punch in if you want to donate. So here's what you do. You can help youth mental health this year by donating $5, and all you have to do is text youth to the number 45678. And what's happening today is Bell will match all the donations up to a total of $1 million. All the proceeds, they're going to 6 organizations dedicated to addressing Canada's growing youth mental health crisis. And we say growing. Integrated Youth Services, Jack.org, Kids Help Phone, National Association of Friendship Centers, Strongest Families Institute, and Youth in Mind Foundation. So the funds are being spread throughout all those means. CTV News, we have to note, is a division of Bell Media.
And the Raptors 905 are continuing an annual tradition marking Bell Let's Talk Day with hundreds of school kids. CTV's Rahim Ladani is at the Paramount Fine Food Center in Mississauga and joins us now live. Always a big turnout for this event.
Nathan, it certainly is always a big turnout. In fact, there's not hundreds, there are thousands of students here right across the GTA. We got some special friends over here letting all the students know that because today is Bell Let's Talk Day, there's a friendly dino here to listen. In fact, anyone is here to listen to students who want to share their message to make sure they're in a good headspace. I want to bring in some other special friends. Come on in here. We have Stephanie, Julia, and Linda, all from St. Angela Merici, and they do some great work at their school. Stephanie, let's start with you. Talk to me about mental health in the schools and what do you see on a day-to-day basis?
Okay, I think that as a school community, we try to encourage a healthy mental health attitude throughout the whole school year, not just on Bell Let's Talk, which is important, but I think as a school we try to embrace healthy mental health within the whole community. Absolutely. All the time.
Yeah. Julia, let me ask you, talk to me about the stigma. Has it gone down over the years? Are people more comfortable talking about it?
So that's definitely the hope, and I can say that at St. Angela Merici, we have tried for several years. We put on a Bell Let's Talk Day Spirit Week for the entire week. We focus on different events of starting the conversation and being a part of the conversation. So I would definitely say for Merici, and I think board-wide, Deaf and Peel, we have done a great job at continuing that conversation and answering the needs of our students.
And Linda, what's your message to those students, for those who maybe don't know that there are people that they will listen and if they need to talk to?
Just making the kids comfortable, making them want to come to us and talk to us, and letting them know that we are always there to listen, and just making them comfortable to talk about their feelings and express themselves with us.
The three of you guys do incredible work. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, there is still a game here. The third quarter is in its way. It's a close one, 74-73, Raptors 905. But today is all about cheering on mental health. Reporting live, I'm Rahim Ladani. I'll send it back to you both in studio.
Thank you. And we have breaking news this hour. Mississauga and a fire and emergency services are on the scene of a commercial fire. It's on Bren Road near Torbram and Dairy Road. It's a major operation. We're told more than 50 crews are on scene, along with 12 frontline apparatus and supporting equipment. Take a look. You can see thick smoke filling the air. Now, according to officials, this is a defensive operation. Crews battling not only the fire, but the frigid conditions as well. We'll keep an eye on that story.
Another contender has thrown her hat into the ring to be the next leader of the federal Liberals and Canada's new Prime Minister.
I think it is incredibly important, for the party and our great country of Canada to have the voices of diversity. It is incredibly important to have someone who has actually run a business that has started from the grassroots and from the ground up, to where it is today. And it is important to have someone who's going to stand up and fight for Canadians.
Ruby Dalla announced her candidacy today on CTV Your Morning. The former Liberal MP says she is entering the race to represent all Canadians and will stand up for our country on the international stage. Dalla joins a race for the leadership that now includes Chrystia Freeland, Mark Carney, and Karina Gould.
Meanwhile, the federal Conservative leader reiterated his call today for an immediate election. Pierre Poilievre says there is a leadership vacuum in Canada right now.
We have a weak
effectively former prime minister who's thoroughly discredited and widely unpopular. He has no credibility with anyone. And then you have a squabbling group of other Liberals fighting for political power. That's left a vacuum. So effectively, we have 10 foreign ministers in the form of premiers who are all running around saying different things. What we need is a axe the tax election now, so we can elect a strong government that will take back control.
Pierre Poilievre says it's important to elect a strong government that will take back control of overspending, taxes, inflation, and immigration, and be able to go to Washington with strength to put Canada first.
Ontario's trade minister says addressing the tariff threat from the United States is the main priority for the provincial government right now. And Victor Fedeli said today he's seeing a lot of support south of the border.
We met with senators, members of Congress, businesses, U.S. businesses, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. There's really nobody that wants these tariffs.
U.S. President Donald Trump has suggested the 25% tariffs on Canadian goods could go into effect February 1st. Fedeli says all of the American groups and organizations that Ontario representatives have spoken to understand tariffs equal taxes. A provincial delegation will be traveling to Washington in 3 weeks to make its case. And we continue our coverage on the tariff threat from U.S. President Donald Trump.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting the Trump administration is using the threat as leverage to kickstart renegotiations on the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade deal a year ahead of schedule. Trump says the proposed tariffs have nothing to do with reopening negotiations on the trade agreement, which is up for review in 2026. The president has indicated a 25% tariff could be slapped on all Canadian goods by February 1st. He also signed an executive order calling for a study of trade imbalances by April. Meantime, BC Premier David Eby suggesting a way Canadians can respond to the tariff threat.
For retaliatory measures, for the government of British Columbia, everything is on the table. And I hope for British Columbians at home, when you're at the grocery store and you have a chance to buy a product right now, you're looking carefully at the labels to support Canadian jobs and to support Canada at this critical time.
Eby is also urging BC residents to rethink trips to the U.S. He says Canadians should think carefully about spending money in a country that wants to do economic harm. Eby and his fellow premiers will be meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau virtually today to discuss Canada's response to the proposed tariffs. And CTV's Scott Hurst is following the latest on the tariff threat and joins us now. So, Scott, how serious is Trump about launching his 25% tariff on Canadian goods February 1st?
Nathan, the premiers and the federal government, of course, meeting again, as you mentioned, virtually. And we've seen them meet a lot over the past days and weeks because this threat is still looming large over our entire economy. As we've heard for many weeks now, it could be incredibly harmful from coast to coast on a whole swath of different sectors. And as you heard from the BC Premier, though, it could be incredibly harmful to the Canadian consumer as well, which is part of his pitch for Canadians as a whole to think about what they buy and think about where they go. And if they do have plans to travel south of the border for a country that is looking to do deliberate economic harm for the Canadian economy. And so that is why the federal government, the premiers, and also the Canada-U.S. Relations Council, the newly formed task force, which is advising and working with the federal government on the plan, taking it incredibly seriously. And at the moment right now, Nathan, as we have this short reprieve, of course, there was a threat that these tariffs could be coming in on day one of the Trump administration. That has not happened as of yet. But of course, February 1st is less than 2 weeks away. So as we have this short reprieve right now, the pitch from Canada is that we are a safe, secure, and reliable partner in an uncertain world as they continue to really put on a full court press to American lawmakers, American business leaders, and everyday Americans that ultimately we are better together because our economies are so incredibly interconnected. Trade between the two countries tops about $1 trillion every year. So there is a lot on the line economically, and that is why right now, while we don't have the tariffs on us at the moment with that threat of February 1st coming, the pressure from Canada is to convince American lawmakers and business leaders that we are better together as our economy works incredibly interconnected.
All right, CTV's Scott Hurst on the Trump tariff threat. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
And while there are differing views on how best to respond to U.S. tariffs, if Trump follows through, it will not be good for Canada.
In part 3 of our special coverage, we look at the potential impact on food producers. CTV Sean Leathong has the story.
Yeah, so here what we're doing is we take fresh organic kale.
This is the processing area for Healthy Crunch, a Canadian company with a focus on healthy, non-allergenic food, making their original kale chips. They found a market here in Canada with over 10 million in sales last year.
So we have over 120 different products. And
Founder and CEO Julie Bednarski is looking to expand into the U.S.
So this year we're going to be launching into Whole Foods in the U.S., Target, Walmart, a lot of the other regional retailers like Kroger.
Bednarski is a registered dietitian and chef. She launched Healthy Crunch 10 years ago to make healthy, enjoyable snack food. Success in Canada has seen their product line grow. Mattel even reached out to partner with Healthy Crunch for Healthy Barbie-branded Rice Krispie Squares. Optimistic about expansion into the U.S., had Bednarski expecting sales to more than double this year.
And so it's dramatically going to impact our business in a negative way if these tariffs do come into play.
In the food industry, margins are extremely low.
Sylvain Charlebois from Dalhousie University says a 25% tariff would all but block ready-made foods from selling.
You're basically selling to grocers, and so they need to, if they want to carry your product, they need to make darn sure that that product actually is priced competitively.
Charlebois says that of the $41 billion in food products that are sent to the U.S. each year, the majority comes right from the farm.
If you're a farm gate player like wheat or beef or pork, then you have more space, you have more options, and you can still remain committed to the U.S. market.
He says Canadian farmers can move quickly to sell products overseas or even take a hit on margin in the short term.
Well, Canada's a very bad abuser also.
President Donald Trump said he would impose 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico starting February 1st.
these are going to Walmart Canada.
For companies like Healthy Crunch, the future seems less certain.
There's 50% of me says it's going to happen. The other half of me says it's not going to happen. So I'm kind of on the fence.
Charlebois predicts that tariffs on food exports are something Trump may avoid.
Americans will feel it immediately, almost, at the grocery store. It will take just days before they actually start seeing prices go higher.
Sean Leathong, CTV News.
Prince Harry has settled his legal battle against Robert Murdoch's UK newspaper group for serious intrusion into his private life shortly before the trial was set to begin.
After endless resistance, denials, and legal battles by newsgroup newspapers, including spending more than £1 billion in payouts and in legal costs, as well as paying off those in the know, in order to prevent the full picture from coming out, News UK is finally held to account for its illegal actions and its blatant disregard for the law.
In a statement, the news organization apologized to Harry for phone hacking and misusing private information, and also apologized for intruding in the private life of his mother, the late Princess Diana. The publisher reportedly settled for an 8-figure sum. Lindsay.
Well, we started off the day at minus 18.2 degrees at Pearson Airport this morning. Very cold. Here's a look at some of the other very cold temperatures experienced around our province. Minus 30 degrees this morning in Algonquin Park, minus 25 in Welland. And these are core temperatures, not even factoring in the wind chill. Factor that in, and it felt at one point like minus 28 today in the GTA, close to minus 30 as well. So a reminder that frostbite continues to be a risk. If you do have to work outside or be outside today, there are some things you can do to protect yourself. Make sure you're taking indoor breaks to stay warm. Speaking of warming up, there is a slight change on the horizon, especially as we make our way toward this weekend. A full look at your forecast is coming up.
A rare winter storm churned across the U.S. Gulf Coast yesterday, breaking snowfall records in a southern region where flurries are unusual. This is New Orleans, which received nearly 25 centimeters. The last time the city received any measurable snowfall was 2009. Snow, ice, and wind gusts could make travel difficult for several days across the south. Much of the United States remains in a dangerous deep freeze.
And here's something that is definitely not recommended. A man in South Carolina decided to get in some skiing during the unusual snowfall. He was pulled behind a vehicle on a street in Charleston. The winter weather happened as people were heading home from work, causing drivers to take it slow on the roads. And I've been to Charleston, and I went there to get away from the winter weather because it's nice and warm, and yeah, that's unusual.
Highly unusual. This is really a once-in-a-generation storm across the deep south. First time ever a blizzard warning in some of those locations. And you know, some parts of Florida can now say they've had more snow than Toronto this winter.
Oh, wow.
So that should just give you an idea of what's going on there. And I don't want to say we are to blame, but the Arctic air that we are experiencing, yeah, it's been sinking all the way south to the Gulf of Mexico. So as a result, temperatures are very cold and there is snow. For us, though, improvements are on the way. Weather is brought to you by the Pressler Law Firm Injury Lawyers. You don't pay unless they win. It was another bitterly cold start to the day today, our coldest temperature we've recorded so far this season, minus 18.2 degrees. There was, however, some sunshine, so we'll take that. A little more cloud is expected later on today. And then here's what's left of that storm across the U.S. It is now officially moving out to sea, but temperatures behind it remain quite cold, below freezing still this hour in states like Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, and yes, even parts of Florida too. Here's a look at where we stand currently. Minus 13 degrees in Toronto, still feeling like minus 23. As mentioned, that extreme cold warning has come to an end for much of the GTA. It remains in place for areas to the west and to the south, at least for a little bit longer today. Our afternoon high should be somewhere around minus 11 degrees, still feeling like minus 21. And I do want to point out the fact that even though what we've experienced is quite cold, it's not record-breaking. Our record low for this day is about minus 28 degrees, and that's the core temperature, not necessarily what it felt like. It sure felt close to minus 30 overnight last night and early this morning. Tonight, if you're brave enough and want to venture out for a skate, it's worth mentioning that the temperature isn't going to fall all that much through the night tonight. That's the first sign that things are starting to change. Temperatures are going to moderate as we make our way into Thursday, Friday, and especially for the weekend, we'll be much closer to seasonal, which seasonal average is around minus 2 degrees. Here's a look at our current satellite and radar. You can see the cloud cover starting to move in. The lake effect snow, it's changing direction a little bit, but we do have a clipper system that's going to move in tonight and tomorrow. Could bring us a couple of centimeters of snow, maybe a trace to 2 centimeters, but communities east of Durham region could see a little bit more than that, maybe 5 to 10 centimeters. Here's how that plays out. So I'll pause it here around midnight tonight, heading into Thursday. You can see that there is widespread snow potential. It doesn't do a great job showing up on this forecast radar, but there's midday as well. This is all going to move on out quickly as clipper systems do. Behind it, we experience some sunshine and a slightly cooler temperature again on Friday at minus 5 degrees. Overnight low still in the minus double digits, but here comes the improvement. Minus 3 degrees for your Saturday, minus 2 on Sunday, and it looks as though we will be seasonal or slightly below with the chance of flurries through the early part of next week too. That's your look at the weather for now. Michelle, over to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. And still to come on CTV News at noon, there are new rules for high-interest loans, but is it good news for consumers? CTV's Pat Foran has this consumer alert. New rules for high-interest loans came into effect on January 1st in a move to crack down on predatory lending practices.
The rules set limits on payday loan charges and cap the interest rate that can be charged, which could be good news for some consumers. CTV's Pat Foran explains.
The federal government brought in 2 major changes after concerns predatory lenders were taking advantage of vulnerable clients in lower-income communities. Acorn Canada, a group which fights for social justice, said in a statement, Acorn sees this as a very positive step. This policy change will help low and moderate income people save hundreds of millions of dollars. Payday loans are generally paid back in 2 weeks. Now there's a federal cap of payday loan fees at $14 per $100 borrowed. This will help, but payday loans are still the most expensive way to borrow money.
You're paying $14 and you pay it back in 2 weeks. That means if you get a loan every 2 weeks for a year, that's 364% interest you're paying.
The other change involves high-interest loans. The criminal rate of interest that could be charged before January 1st was almost 48%. Now it's been capped at 35%. So if you have poor credit, the most you can be charged for a loan is now 35% interest.
for customers that can still be approved, it can be helpful.
Money Mart has 365 locations across Canada and offers payday loans and unsecured personal loans. The company says it's already turning away some customers who are unable to qualify under the new regulations.
Where somebody would have got $5,000, $10,000 before, they're now getting declined outright, and that it's pushing them to illegal lenders.
Credit counseling services agree some clients who may not qualify for a high-interest loan will turn to more expensive options to borrow money.
Is that consumer now forced to go to a payday loan company, a pawn shop, or something on the black market?
Advocates say the changes could help some borrowers who have been trapped in a cycle of debt. If they can improve their credit rating, they may qualify for lower interest loans and save money. Pat Foran, CTV News.
York Regional Police are warning the public about staged collision carjackings. The incidents see suspects cause minor crashes by driving into the victim's vehicle on purpose. When the victim gets out to look at the damage, the suspects will then attempt to steal their vehicle. Police outline some safety measures drivers can take.
Take the precautions, take the 2 seconds, install dash cams with cloud-based software so that it can be uploaded even if the vehicle is stolen. Make sure that you're getting GPSs installed in the car. And we've actually seen kill switches that have been put in vehicles that require keys. Turn that car off before you get out of it. Once you exit, with whether it's your phone or whether it's your keys, that vehicle can't stop. It completely gets rid of the distraction thefts.
York Regional Police are asking anyone with information about the carjackings to come forward or contact Crime Stoppers.
And still to come, a new 4-part TV show is taking on the issues of addiction and mental health. CTV's Andrea Case will have a preview.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
A new 4-part television series is coming to Bell 5 TV 1. It tackles love, loss, and the complex dynamics of addiction and recovery.
For the lead actor, his own life story helped craft the show. CTV's Andrea Case has his story.
Probably because I keep relapsing and coming back here. I think everyone else is just waiting for that phone call, you know?
What phone call?
That I'm dead.
Disrepair is a new TV series which tackles the themes of mental health and addiction.
I'm in recovery personally. I credit CAMH for saving my life. I'm still a client with CAMH. And obviously, first time I went to CAMH, I missed my daughter's 8th birthday, and that stays with you.
It is easy to see for lead actor Matthew Sauvé, this emotional subject matter was personal.
And I fought so hard. In 4 years, I went to rehab 4 times. It was not a linear, but I think it was fatherhood.
Sauvé has been an actor for 13 years and co-created the story. He plays Jake Thomas, a man who, after years of addiction and relapsing and recovering, is sober and is working on repairing his relationships with his family.
And for some reason, I felt like my mission, whether it be from God or in life, I thought I would had to get the funding or be able to tell the story, I'd have to get to a certain level. But this just kind of happened with my good friend Tommy, who's a co-creator, and it just happened. And it was just like the role, I felt like it was a role I was supposed to play. I feel like there was a bigger purpose.
Sauvé says addiction and mental health affects the afflicted and all who know and love them.
I just hope this story resonates with people that are secretly suffering in silence. You can reach out. Help is available. And you can, when you come out of rehab, there's going to be a lot of people that you've hurt, and you can make amends, and you can build. There is hope for that.
From his own medical detox at KMH to a career in front of the camera, his story has a happy ending. Sauvé's daughter is 21 now, and they have a beautiful relationship.
And what I like about this story is we start from the recovery point of the broken relationships, because it is a disease of deception. You have to lie for that disease to live in you. And I wanted people to know that you can come out of recovery and mend those relationships.
Disrepair debuts on Bell 5 TV 1 on January 29. Andrea Case, CTV News.
And as we mark Bell Let's Talk Day, we're joined by CTV's Halifax correspondent, Paul Hollingsworth. Paul has a very personal story about how mental health has affected his family. And Paul, great to have you with us. You wrote a beautiful and heartbreaking piece on losing your older brother, Bryce, to suicide. I personally had no idea, but it definitely proves that so often we just don't know what people are going through. And in the case of your brother, it really does seem like there was so much that could have been said, but it wasn't, and that weighs on you.
It certainly does. And by the way, thank you for having me on your show. I'm thrilled to join you on today of all days, of course, but it's just nice to be able to join you and discuss this in a bit of long form format. Look, my brother, like many kids in Halifax growing up in these neighborhoods, the neighborhood where I'm standing in right now, my brother Bryce and I, we were separated by 3 years. We had a normal childhood. He was a good-looking guy, very athletic, kind of preppy back in the 80s. If you met him, you would have liked him. He had a natural charisma to him. He had a lot of friends. And he was very protective of me. I was a bit shy in those days. And he made sure that nobody messed with me. He did the big brother thing to take care of his little brother. And he was by far my best friend. We shared bunk beds together. The whole brother package, whatever you think a brother relationship should be, that was the experience. And then over the years, in the late 1980s, I started to notice things, behavioral shifts. He was pulling away from his friendship groups. To be blunt, he was hanging around with some people he probably shouldn't have been hanging around with. He was drinking a bit too much, slid into drugs and addiction, and things were not going well. I remember being a teenager and not knowing what to do about it, like having no tools in my toolbox other than to think that, well, he'll snap out of this. This is just a phase. And I was probably embarrassed by his behavior, if I'm being honest, back in the day. And nothing was done. Nobody helped him. Nobody reached out. Nobody intervened. And the week leading into Christmas in 1991, he took his life. Whatever you think that moment was, multiply it by 1,000. It was horrible. I had to go to the morgue to identify him. I had to tell my parents. I had to tell my siblings, my grandparents. We opened up Christmas presents from him at Christmas a week after he had passed away. That sounds kind of messed up, but everything just exploded. And then out of that horrible experience, I was just a kid. I decided, what do I need to do? Like, what do I need to do to get on the right side of this? I'm not going to pursue grievance. I decided that right away. I wasn't going to be angry. I thought that was not a productive path. And little bit, piece by piece, I decided to use that experience to try to be the person I want to become, to be kind, to be considerate, to look out for people, to treat friendships and relationships like personal codes of conduct, to look for those Bryce Hollingsworths in the crowd, to see if there are people in the community like my brother was suffering and what could I do to help, to talk to them, to let them know I could talk to them, to encourage them to seek help, to surround them with kindness and affection. That's the story of my brother. It's a sad story, but the story of what happened to my brother and how it impacted my life, if I can keep a happy and sad thought in my head at the same time, Michelle, I can tell you positive things have come out of this horrible experience. I'm proud of some of the stuff I've been able to do in the community, but I don't pretend for a minute my work is done. We all have so much more work to do when it comes to talking to people and making those connections on a daily basis, on a minute-by-minute basis.
Paul, and that's your message. And really what you want to drive home is that you just want people to open up and talk, even though it is not easy, I'm sure.
It's extremely difficult. Look, I'm not a psychologist. I was an English major at school, then a journalism major, so I'm not the person to break down behavioral science, but because of this experience, I do have some experience when it comes to analyzing some of these things. Oftentimes, the people you love the most, that you're closest to, they're usually the people that won't accept the help that's offered. You have to crack through that. But even in other ways, in our community, I'll tell you a story, and I don't want to take too much time on my answer, but about several months ago, I had a viewer reach out to the CTV station here in Halifax, and she told me that her son was 17 years old, might have been 18 years old. He was suffering from such anxiety, he hadn't left the house in 2 years. 2 years. And he was a fan of me. He liked to watch my work, going back to my previous career at TSN. And she said, could I come talk to him? Well, of course I did. I stopped doing what I was doing. I went down to talk to him. I don't know if it helped, but I bet you it helped a little. I bet you it helped just a little bit. And maybe that's a baby step going forward. Maybe that mother intervening and reaching out to me, not knowing how I was going to answer, and then me taking the effort to go talk to him could be just enough to pump a little bit of oxygen into that situation, to put a little bit of hope on the table, and maybe pursue a more productive path going forward. I think that story could be an analogy or an example to serve for others. If we work hard, we communicate with each other, we always encourage, we never discourage, we try to reach out, we talk, we communicate to let people know they're not alone. If we can achieve that, we can maybe avoid having another Bryce Hollingsworth in our community suffer that same fate. I think there's a lot of work to be done on this. I think there's more work to be done on this. But when it comes to avoiding the subject, that stops with me. What happened in my family, my learned experiences, I'm not doing that anymore. I will always find a pathway to reach out and connect with people and do whatever I can possible to at least bring some positivity to that situation. And ideally, it could be a starting point to lead to something more productive.
CTV's Paul Hollingsworth, we appreciate your message on this Bell Let's Talk Day. Take care.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.